Hello everyone, continue with the City of Ember, and yep, we will recap from last time. Lena was able to make it to Dune in the parks, and she had brought Poppy with her. Dune and her were able to load the boat, get it onto the river, and off they went on their journey. They finally came to a more calm area, and they were able to pull the boat ashore, and then Lena went up and found a path. The last part we just left off on, Poppy had something and they realized it is a book, and that is where we are right now. Dune ran his finger under the first line. It says, they tell us we learn. No, leave. They tell us we leave tonight. He looked up and met Lena's eyes. Leave? Said Lena. From where? From Ember? Dune asked. Could someone have come this way before? Or was it someone leaving the other city? Dune looked down at the book again. He rifled through the pages. There were many of them. Well, let's save it, said Lena. We'll read it when we get to the new city. Dune nodded. Yeah, it'll be easier to see there. So Lena wrapped up the book again and tied it securely into Dune's bundle. They sat on the rock shelf for a while, eating the food Dune had brought. The candles wedged in the boat still shone steadily, and their light was cozy like lamplight. It made golden shapes on the still surface of the pond. Dune said, I saw the guards run after you. Tell me what happened. Lena told him. And what about Poppy? What did you tell Mrs. Murdo? I told her the truth. At least I hope it's the truth. I caught up with her on the way home after the singing. She'd seen the posters. She was terrified. But before she could ask questions, I just said she must give Poppy to me. I said I was taking her to safety. Because that's what I suddenly realized on the roof of the gathering hall, Dune. I'd been thinking before that I had to leave Poppy because she'd be safe with Mrs. Murdo. But when the lights went out, I suddenly knew there is no safety in Ember. Not for long. Not for anyone. I couldn't leave her behind. Whatever happened to us now, it's better than what's going to happen there. And did you explain all that to Mrs. Murdo? No, I was in a terrible hurry to get to the pipeworks to meet you, and I knew I had to go while there were still crowds in the street, so it would be hard for the guards to see me. I just said I was taking Poppy to safety. Mrs. Murdo handed her over, but she sort of sputtered, where and why? And I said, you'll know in a few days. It's all right. And then I ran. So you gave her the note then, said Dune. The one meant for Clary? Oh. Lena stared at him, stricken. Oh, the message to Clary. She put her hand in her pocket and pulled out the crumpled piece of paper. I forgot all about it. All I was thinking of was getting Poppy and getting to you. So no one knows about the room full of boats. Lena just shook her head, her eyes wide. How will we get back to tell them? We can't. Dune, said Lena. If we told the people right away, even just a few people, if we hadn't decided to be grand and announce it at the singing. I know, said Dune. But we didn't. That's all. We didn't tell, and now no one knows. I mean, I did leave a message for my father, though. He told Lena about the pinning his last-minute message to the kiosk in Selverton Square. I said we found the way out and that it was in the pipeworks, but, I mean, that's not much help. Well, Clary has seen the instructions, Lena said. She knows there's an egress. She might find it. Or she might not. There was nothing to be done about it. And so they put the supplies back into Dune's pillowcase and got ready to go. Lena used Dune's rope to make a leash for Poppy. She tied one end around Poppy's waist and the other around her own. She filled her pockets with packs of matches, and Dune put all the remaining candles in his sack in case they arrived in the new city at night. He filled his bottle with river water, lit a candle for himself and one for Lena, and thus equipped, They left the boat behind and crept up the rocky shelf to the path. We are on chapter 19, A World of Light. As they squeezed past the rocks at the entrance to the path, Dune thought he saw the candlelight glance off a shiny place on the wall. He stopped to look, and when he saw what it was, he called out to Lena, who was a few steps ahead of him. "There's a notice!" It was a framed sign bolted to the stone, a printed sheet behind a piece of glass. Dampness had seeped under the glass and made splotches on the paper, but by holding their candles up close, they could read it. "Welcome, refugees from Ember. This is the final stage of your journey. Be prepared for a climb that will take several hours. Fill your bottles with water from the river. We wish you good fortune. The Builders." "They're expecting us," said Lena. "Well, they wrote this a long time ago," Dune said. "The people who put it here must all be dead by now." "That's true, but they wished us good fortune. It makes me feel as if they're watching over us." "Yeah, and maybe their great-great-great-grandchildren will be there to welcome us." Encouraged, they started up the path. Their candles made only a feeble glow, but they could tell that the path was quite wide. The ceiling was high over their heads. The path seemed to have been made for a great company of people. In some places, the ground beneath their feet was rutted in parallel grooves, as if a wheeled cart of some kind had been driven over it. And after they had walked a while, they realized that they were moving in long zigzags. The path would go in one direction for some time, and then turn sharply and go in the opposite direction. As they went along, they talked less and less. The path sloped relentlessly upward, and they needed their breath just for breathing. The only sound was the light pat-pat of their footsteps. Lena and Dune took turns carrying Poppy on their backs. She had gotten tired of walking very soon and cried to be picked up. Twice they stopped and sat down to rest, leaning against the walls of the passage and taking drinks from Dune's bottle of water. "How many hours do you think we've been walking?" Lena asked. "I don't know," Dune said. "Maybe 2, maybe 3. We must nearly be there." They climbed on and on. Their first candles had long ago burned down to the last inch, as had their second candles. Finally, when their third ones were about halfway gone, Lena began to notice the air smelled different. The cold, sharp-edged rock smell of the tunnel was changing to something softer, a strange, lovely smell. As they rounded a corner, a gust of this soft air swept past them, and their candles went out. Dune said, "I'll find a match." But Lena said, "No, wait, look." They were not in complete darkness. A faint haze of light shone in the passage ahead of them. "It's the lights of the city," breathed Lena. Lena set Poppy down. "Quick, Poppy," she said, and Poppy began to trot, keeping close at Lena's heels. The strange, lovely smell in the air grew stronger. The passage came to an end a few yards farther along, and before them was an opening, like a great empty doorway. Without a word, Lena and Dune took hold of each other's hands, and Lena took hold of Poppy's. When they stood in the doorway and looked out, they saw no new city at all, but something infinitely stranger, a land vast and spacious beyond any of their dreams, filled with air that seemed to move, and lit by a shining silver circle hanging in an immense black sky. In front of their feet, the ground swept away in a long, gentle slope. It was not bare as stone as in Ember. Something soft covered it, like silvery hair, as high as their knees. Down the slope was a tumble of dark, round shapes, and then another slope rose beyond that way. Way off into the distance, as far as they could see, The land lay in rolling swells with clumps of shadow in low places between them. "Dune!" cried Lena. "More lights!" She pointed at the sky. He looked up and saw them. Hundreds and hundreds of tiny flecks of light strewn like spilled salt across the blackness. "Oh," he whispered. There was nothing else to say. The beauty of these lights made his breath stop in his throat. They took a few steps forward. Dune bent to feel the strands that grew out of the ground, almost higher than Poppy's head. They were cool and smooth and soft, and there was a dampness on them. "Breathe," said Lena. She opened her mouth and took in a long breath of air, and Dune did the same. "It's sweet," he said. "So full of smells." They held their hands out to feel the long stems as they waded slowly through them. The air moved against their faces and in their hair. "Hear those noises?" said Dune. A high, thin, chirping sound came from somewhere nearby. It was repeated over and over like a question. "Yeah," said Lena. "What could it be?" "Something alive, I think. Maybe some kind of a bug." "A bug that sings." Lena turned to Dune. Her face was shadowy in the silver light. "It's so strange here, Dune, and so huge, but I'm not afraid." "No, I'm not either. It feels like a dream." "A dream, yes. Maybe that's why it feels familiar. I might have dreamed about this place." They walked until they came to where the dark shapes billowed up from the ground. These were plants, they discovered, taller than they were, with stems as hard and thick as the walls of houses, and leaves that spread out over their heads. On the slope beside these plants, they sat down. "Do you think there's a city here somewhere?" Lena asked. "Or any people at all?" "Well, I don't see any lights," said Dune, "even far off." "But with this silver lamp in the sky, maybe they don't need lights." Dune shook his head doubtfully. "Well, people would need more light than this," he said. How could you see well enough to work? How could you grow your food? It's a beautiful light, but not bright enough to live by." "Then what shall we do if there's no city and no people?" I don't know. Dune didn't feel like thinking. He was tired of figuring things out. He wanted to look at this new world and take in the scent of it and feel it and figure things out. Lena felt the same way. She stopped asking questions, drew Poppy onto her lap, and gazed in silence at the glimmering landscape. After a while, she became aware that something strange was happening. Surely, when she had first sat down, the silver circle was just above the highest branch of the tall plant. Now, the branch cut across it. As she watched, the circle sank very slowly until it was hidden, except for a gleam of brightness behind the leaves. "It's moving," she said to Dune. "Yeah." A little later, it seemed to her that her eyes were blurring. There was a fuzziness in the sky, especially around the edges, and it took her a while to realize what was making the fuzziness. "Light," she said. "I see it," said Dune. "It's getting brighter." The edge of the sky turned gray, and then pale orange, and then deep fiery crimson. The land stood out against it, a long black rolling line. One spot along this line grew so bright they could hardly look at it. So bright, it seemed to take a bite out of the land. It rose higher and higher until they could see that it was a fiery circle, first deep orange and then yellow, and too bright to look at any longer. The color seeped out of the sky and washed over the land. Light sparkled on the soft hair of the hills and shone through the lacy leaves as every shade of green sprang to life around them. They lifted their faces to the astonishing warmth. The sky arched over them, higher than they could have imagined, a pale, clear blue. Lena felt as though a lid that had been on her all her life had been lifted off. Light and air rushed through her, making a song like the songs of Ember, only it was a song of joy. She looked at Dune and saw he was smiling and crying at the same time, and she realized that she was too. Everything around them was springing to life. A glorious racket came from the branches. Tweedling notes, peeps, burbles, high sharp calls. Bugs? Wondered Dune, imagining with awe the bugs that could make such sounds. But then he saw something fly from a cluster of leaves and swoop down low across the ground, making a clear, sweet call as it flew. Did you see that? He said to Lena, pointing. And there's another one. And there. There, repeated Poppy, leaping from Lena's lap and whirling around, pointing in every direction. The air was full of them now. They were much too large to be insects. One of them lit nearby on a stem. It looked at them with two bright black eyes, and opening its mouth, which was pointed like a thorn, set forth a little trill. It's speaking to us, said Dune. What could it be? Lena shook her head. The little creature shifted its claw-like feet on the stem, flapped its brown wings, and trilled again. Then it leapt into the air and was gone. They leapt up too and threw themselves into exploration. The ground was alive with insects, so many that Dune just laughed in helpless wonder. Flowers bloomed among the green blades, and a stream ran at the foot of the hill. They roamed over the green-coated slopes, running, sliding, calling out to each other with new discovery, until they were exhausted. Then they sat down by the entrance to the path to eat what was left of their food. They untied Dune's bundle, and Lena cried out, "The book! We forgot about the book!" There it was, wrapped in its blotched green cloth. Well, let's read it out loud while we eat, said Dune. Lena opened the fragile notebook and laid it on the ground in front of her. She picked up a carrot with one hand, and with the other, she kept her place on the scribbled page. This is what she read. And tomorrow, or the next time, we will read the last chapter. And I hope you were using your inferencing skills, because that silver glow or that silver circle in the sky was the moon. The fiery glow that's coming up now is the sun. They're seeing all the grass and the trees and the things that were fluttering and flying by and tweeting that they thought were insects are birds. So I hope you realize kind of where they are right now, and we will enjoy our last chapter tomorrow.